The rain had been falling for hours when Thomas noticed the young man sitting alone at the bus stop. First, he didn't think much of it. People came and went all the time, especially in a city like this. But something about the way the boy sat there, completely still, staring at nothing, made Thomas slow down. At 76, Thomas had learned to recognize silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the heavy kind, the kind that sits on your shoulders and refuses to leave. He had carried that silence himself for years after losing his wife. The street was nearly empty now. Cars passed by, splashing water across the road, but no one stopped. No one looked. The young man didn't even seem to notice the rain anymore. His clothes were soaked, his hands trembling slightly, but his eyes, they looked distant, like he was somewhere far away. Thomas stood there for a moment, debating whether to walk away. After all, it wasn't his business. People had their own lives, their own problems, but something inside him refused to let him leave. Slowly, he walked toward the bus stop, his steps careful on the wet pavement. As he got closer, he could see the boy more clearly. He couldn't have been older than 25. There was something broken in his expression, something familiar. Thomas stopped just a few feet away and spoke gently, his voice almost blending with the sound of the rain. "You've been sitting here a long time, haven't you?" The young man didn't respond immediately. For a few seconds, it felt like he hadn't even heard the question. Then slowly, he turned his head, his eyes meeting Thomas's. There was hesitation there, as if he wasn't sure whether to trust a stranger or even speak at all. "I'm fine," he said quietly, though his voice betrayed him. It carried a weight that didn't match the words. Thomas gave a small nod, not arguing, not pushing. "Of course," he replied softly. "You look like someone who's completely fine, sitting in the rain without a coat." For a brief moment, something changed. The young man's lips twitched, almost forming a smile, but it faded before it could fully appear. "I missed my bus," he said after a pause. Thomas glanced down the empty road. "The last one passed over an hour ago." The boy looked away again. "Yeah, I know." Silence returned, heavier this time, the kind that says more than words ever could. Thomas sat down beside him, ignoring the cold metal bench and the rain that continued to fall. "You don't seem like you're waiting for a bus," Thomas said gently. The young man swallowed hard, his hands tightening. "I'm not," he admitted. Another pause. Then, almost in a whisper, he said, "I just don't know where else to go." Thomas didn't ask any more questions. He had learned long ago that people speak when they're ready, not when they're forced. Instead, he simply sat there, sharing the silence, letting the rain fall around them like a curtain separating them from the rest of the world. After a while, the young man spoke again. "I lost my job this morning," he said, his voice barely steady, "and I had a fight with my father. He told me not to come back." The words came out slowly, like they had been sitting inside him for too long. "I thought I had everything figured out," he continued, "but now, I don't have a place to go. I don't even know what I'm supposed to do next." Thomas listened carefully, his expression calm, but his eyes filled with quiet understanding. "Life has a way of doing that," he said after a moment. "It takes everything you think is certain and turns it upside down." The young man let out a weak laugh. "Yeah, feels like it already did." Thomas looked at him, really looked this time, and saw not just a stranger but a younger version of himself, lost, uncertain, and standing at a point where one wrong step could change everything. "Come with me," Thomas said suddenly. The young man hesitated. "Where?" "Somewhere dry," Thomas replied, standing up slowly, "and somewhere you can think clearly." There was doubt in the boy's eyes, but also exhaustion, the kind that makes you stop questioning and just follow whatever feels safe. After a moment, he nodded and stood up. Thomas led him through quiet streets until they reached a small house at the corner. It wasn't anything special, special, just an old place with a warm light glowing from inside. It's not much, Thomas said as he opened the door, but it's better than sitting in the rain. Inside the air was warm. The young man stepped in slowly, looking around as if he hadn't been in a place like this in a long time. Thomas handed him a towel and made some tea without saying much. The silence here felt different, softer, safer. You can stay here tonight, Thomas said, placing the cup in front of him. No questions, no expectations. The young man stared at him, confused. Why are you helping me? Thomas paused for a moment, then gave a faint smile. Because once, someone did the same for me. The young man didn't know what to say. He sat there quietly, holding the warm cup in his hands, feeling something he hadn't felt all day, a sense of calm. Hours passed, and for the first time, he allowed himself to rest. Not just physically but mentally. The weight on his shoulders felt lighter, even if only for a moment. The next morning when he woke up, Thomas was already sitting by the window, just as the sunlight slowly filled the room. You should go home, Thomas said gently. The young man looked confused. I told you, I can't. Thomas shook his head slightly. You can. Sometimes people say things they don't mean, especially when they're angry. But if you don't go back, you'll never know. There was something in his voice that made it hard to argue. After a long pause, the young man nodded. Before leaving, he turned back. Thank you for everything. Thomas simply smiled. Take care of your life. That's thanks enough. Months later, the young man returned to that same street. But this time, the house at the corner stood quiet. The windows were closed. A small sign hung on the door. For sale. A neighbor passing by noticed him standing there and said softly, the old man who lived here. He passed away a few months ago. The young man stood still, his heart sinking, because in that moment he realized the stranger who had saved him was never meant to stay.